Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. My name is Keisha Daniels, and for a living I work in quality control. It sounds a bit dry, I know, but it is for a company in Charlotte, North Carolina that makes high-end medical devices. Think pacemakers that keep a heart beating in rhythm. Sophisticated surgical robotics that allow surgeons to perform what look like miracles. Dialysis machines that are literally a lifeline for people who would otherwise die. My entire professional life is about finding microscopic flaws before they become catastrophic failures. I am the person who looks for the single hairline crack in a titanium joint. I am the one who traces one misplaced line of code in millions. I look for the tiniest, almost imperceptible misalignment in a component that could mean the difference between a life saved and a life lost. I am paid to be precise, to be logical, to trust data over feelings. It turns out I should have been applying that same level of ruthless scrutiny to my own life a lot sooner. For 3 years, my life was, by all external metrics, perfect. I was engaged to a man named Derek Lawson. If you were casting the perfect fiancé in a movie set in any American city, you would cast Derek. He was a successful financial advisor at a firm uptown in Charlotte, the kind of man who walked into a room and radiated confidence and charm. Derek was handsome in that classic way people like to call all-American. Except in our case, it meant smooth brown skin, a strong jawline, a tight fade, and eyes that made you feel as if you were the only person in the world. He had an easy smile that people trusted. He came from what everyone in our city called a good family. His father, Judge Leonard Lawson, was a respected local judge whose name carried weight in courtrooms and charity galas alike. His mother, Angela Lawson, ran a major charity foundation that funded after-school programs on the West Side and scholarships for Black students. They were the Lawsons, a family whose lives looked perfectly curated, whose holiday cards were always flawless. Derek was their golden boy, and I was the lucky woman who was going to be his wife. We met at a friend's 4th of July barbecue in Raleigh. It was one of those cliché moments people always talk about. I was in the backyard trying to get a stubborn bottle of ketchup to work, slapping the bottom and getting nothing but air. Derek walked up behind me with that brilliant smile and said, "Here, let me see that, Keisha. You are about to start a war with that bottle." I laughed, handed it over, and he tapped the glass just right. A perfect stream of ketchup poured onto my plate. "I am very good in high-pressure situations," he said. "It is one of my many talents." We talked for the rest of the night. We sat on a picnic bench while fireworks exploded over the neighborhood, talking about everything from our favorite movies to how we both felt about being the responsible one in our families. By the time the last firework fizzled out, it felt like I had known him forever. We moved in together after a year, into a beautiful apartment downtown that we had both fallen in love with the second we walked in. It had floor-to-ceiling windows looking over Charlotte's skyline, exposed brick walls, and just enough industrial touches to feel modern without being cold. On our 3rd anniversary, he took me on a surprise trip to wine country in Sonoma, California. He proposed at sunset in a vineyard, the sky streaked with orange and purple. He got down on one knee on the soft grass between the rows of vines and opened a small velvet box. Inside was a classic, elegant diamond ring that he said he had custom designed. "Keisha Daniels," he said, his voice steady and warm. "Will you marry me and build a life with me?" I burst into tears and laughed at the same time. "Yes," I said over and over, barely able to breathe from the rush of joy. "Of course, yes." I said yes without a moment of hesitation. Our wedding was set for the following June, just 8 months away. We had it all planned out in a binder that was 3 inches thick. The ceremony would be at a stunning venue overlooking a lake outside Charlotte. We had a guest list of 150 of our closest friends and family. A caterer from Durham who was famous for his sea bass. I had even found my dress, a simple, timeless A-line gown that made me feel like the sharpest, most grounded version of myself. To pay for this perfect wedding, we opened a joint high-yield savings account the day after we got engaged. We were a team building our future together. Over 2 years, the balance had grown to an impressive $65,000. Or rather, I had grown the balance to $65,000. I never thought of it that way at the time. I just saw it as our money. But the data was clear. With my senior position and a small but significant inheritance I had received from my grandmother a few years earlier, I had contributed a little over $50,000 to the fund. Derek, whose job as a financial advisor was largely commission-based and had its ups and downs, had put in another $15,000. I never once held it against him or made him feel less than for it. His income was variable. Mine was stable. That is how partnership works, I told myself. You cover each other's gaps. I was so proud of the life, the future we were building together. But for the last few months, maybe 6 if I am being brutally honest with myself, something had felt off. It was not a loud, obvious alarm. It was more like a low-frequency hum, a subtle vibration in the structure that you can feel in your bones even if you cannot quite pinpoint the source. A defect so small, so insidious, I kept trying to explain it away, to recalibrate my own sensors. The intimacy between us, which had once been the easy, constant core of our relationship, had dwindled to a trickle. Where we used to be close almost every night, a natural extension of our day, it had dropped to maybe once a week. And even then, it felt distant, perfunctory, like an item on a checklist that needed to be completed before we could go to sleep. There was a scene that kept replaying in my mind. About a month before everything fell apart, we were on the couch watching a movie, some romantic drama set in New York. Halfway through, I leaned my head on his shoulder. It used to be our default position. He would rest his chin lightly on my hair, and I would feel that deep, calm feeling of being exactly where I belonged. That night, after a minute, he shifted, just slightly, so my head slipped off his shoulder. "Sorry," he mumbled. "My neck is just stiff tonight." I pushed myself back up and pretended to stretch. "No worries," I said, forcing a smile. "Maybe I am just heavy-headed." He chuckled once, distracted, eyes back on the screen. I did not think much of it in that moment. Now I see it for what it was, a small, almost imperceptible rejection. A hairline crack. I told myself it was just stress. Of course it was stress. Wedding planning had become a full-time job on top of our actual full-time jobs. His work was demanding. He was always trying to land new clients, going to networking lunches, late-night events in uptown Charlotte, and weekend seminars in Atlanta or Dallas. Life was getting in the way. That is a common system flaw, right? External pressure causing a temporary dip in performance. A variable that could be accounted for and corrected. I was wrong. It was not a temporary dip. It was not a variable. It was a critical fundamental failure in the core programming, and I was refusing to read the diagnostic report that was flashing right in front of my eyes. The moment of truth, the moment the entire system went into catastrophic failure, came on an ordinary Tuesday night. We had just been intimate, and like so many times before in recent months, it was profoundly mediocre. There was no connection, no passion. It felt like 2 people performing a task in the same room. He finished quickly, rolled onto his back, and the silence in our dark bedroom was heavy, thick with unspoken disappointment. I lay there, staring up at the shadows on the ceiling, trying to figure out what to say to break the tension when he broke it for me. He let out a heavy sigh, a sound of deep, weary frustration that had nothing to do with physical exertion. "You know," he said, his voice quiet and casual, almost as if he were talking to himself, as if he were commenting on a television show. "It is funny." I turned my head on the pillow to look at the dark outline of his profile. "What is funny?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "I was just thinking about LaToya," he said. LaToya, his ex-girlfriend. They had dated for 2 years right before he met me. He always described the breakup as mutual, amicable. "We were just too different," he would say with a shrug. "She was a wildfire, and I needed something calmer. That was supposed to be me. I was the calm. I was the stability." He continued, his voice still maddeningly casual. "She just had that fire, you know? She is so toned from her nursing job, always running around on her feet for 12-hour emergency room shifts in the city. Just solid. And she knew what a man needed." The words did not just hang there in the dark. They felt like they had a physical weight pressing down on my chest, squeezing the air from my lungs. It was an act of breathtaking cruelty. He was not just comparing me to her physically, which was humiliating enough. He was telling me, in one of the most vulnerable moments a woman can have with her partner, that I was fundamentally inadequate, that I was a disappointment, that I had failed in some essential primal way. Another woman, a woman from his past, was better. He must have felt the sudden stillness from my side of the bed, felt the air shift and grow cold, because he immediately began clumsy backtracking. "Oh God, Kay, I do not know why I said that," he blurted. "That was so stupid. I am sorry, baby. I am so sorry. I am just really stressed from work. This new client is killing me." It was a random thought, It meant nothing. I did not say a word. I did not cry. I did not scream. I just lay there, my eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling as if I could see right through it. In my mind, a red light was not just flashing anymore. It was a blaring, deafening siren accompanied by a computerized voice calmly repeating, "Warning. System-wide integrity failure. Warning. In my line of work, we have a core principle, a truth that is proven over and over. Where there is one obvious, undeniable defect, there are almost certainly others, more insidious, hidden just below the surface. You just have to have the courage to look for them." He thought he had dodged a bullet. He thought his flimsy apology was enough. He rolled over, murmured, "I love you, baby. Good night." Within 10 minutes, his breathing evened out into soft snores. He was sleeping the peaceful sleep of a man who believed he had gotten away with it. I was wide awake. The official inspection had just begun. I lay there until 3 o'clock in the morning, completely motionless. It was a strange state. My heart was not pounding with rage. My stomach was not churning with a sense of betrayal. I was not crying. Instead, I felt a strange, profound, and deeply unsettling calm settle over me. It was as if the emotional human part of my brain had been neatly disconnected, and a different operating system had taken over. The analytical part, the meticulous, data-driven, impartial part that I used to run diagnostics at my job every day, was now in complete control. I was no longer Keisha, the shocked and wounded fiancé. I was Inspector Daniels, and I had just identified a critical flaw in a high-stakes system. My job now was to isolate the variable, assess the full extent of the damage, and determine the appropriate corrective action. At exactly 3:17 in the morning, I slipped out of bed. I moved with practiced silence, my bare feet making no sound on the cool hardwood floor. I padded over to his nightstand where his smartphone was plugged in, its screen dark. Derek was a notoriously deep sleeper. A freight train and a thunderstorm together could have passed through our bedroom, and he would not have stirred. I carefully unplugged the phone, my movements precise, and carried it out into the living room, closing the bedroom door gently behind me until I heard the soft click of the latch. I sat on our gray linen couch in the darkness, the only light coming from the streetlight outside our window. I took a deep breath. The phone screen lit up my face as I powered it on. A passcode lock appeared. Months earlier, in what I now understood was a masterful piece of manipulative theater, he had told me what it was. He had held up his phone with a flourish, a grand gesture of transparency. "It is your birthday, see?" he had said with that charming, trustworthy grin. "October 24th. I have absolutely nothing to hide from you, baby." The irony now was so thick and bitter, it felt like I could taste it on the back of my tongue. I typed in my own birthday, 1024, and the phone unlocked instantly. My objective was clear: find the source of the system malfunction. I did not have to search for long. His messaging app was right on the home screen. I opened it, my heart a slow, steady drum in my chest. I scrolled through his recent conversations. A group chat with his buddies about a fantasy football draft, a thread with his sister Whitney about their parents' upcoming anniversary party, a quick message exchanged with a client about a meeting. All perfectly normal. Then I saw her name, LaToya, and next to it, not just her name, but a single suggestive flame emoji. I stared at it for a moment, my thumb hovering above the screen. I checked my own contact entry in his phone out of dark curiosity. It was just Keisha. No heart emoji, no pet name, nothing soft. Just my name, as formal and sterile as a lab report. I tapped on the thread with the flame emoji. The messages opened, and in that moment, the floor of my carefully constructed life did not just crack. It fell away completely, leaving me in a free fall. The texts went back 9 months. 9 months. For 3/4 of a year, during the entire time we had been actively planning our wedding, he had been living a secret parallel life. It started somewhat innocently, or so it wanted to look. A happy birthday message from her back in January. "Happy birthday, D. Hope you are still trouble," she wrote, followed by a winking emoji. "Thank you, Toya," he replied. "You know I stay in mild trouble." I stared at the screen, that word stay shooting through me. It was the kind of casual intimacy you do not use with someone who belongs firmly in your past. The conversations quickly morphed into late-night chats. Almost always on the nights I was out of town inspecting manufacturing sites in other states. I traveled maybe 4 or 5 days a month. I now understood he saw those days not as a temporary absence of his fiancée, but as windows of opportunity. They had inside jokes I did not understand, references to old nights together, songs from college, and nicknames they had used years ago. They sent each other photographs, him shirtless and flexing in the gym mirror, her in dark blue scrubs after a long emergency room shift, looking artfully exhausted and beautiful. He complained to her about his stress at work, about the pressure he felt from his father to be perfect. She complained to him about her husband, Elliot, and his recovery after open heart surgery, how she felt like she had become his full-time nurse instead of his wife. The deeper I scrolled, the sicker I felt. It was a slow, creeping nausea that started in the pit of my stomach and spread through my whole body like a chemical leak. This was not just flirtation. This was a deep, ongoing emotional affair. 2 months earlier, there was an exchange that burned itself into my memory. Derek wrote, "Just one of those days. Keisha is so wrapped up in her work stuff. Sometimes I feel like I am talking to a wall. She does not get the pressure I am under." Latoya answered, "I get it. Elliot is so focused on his recovery now. He is like a different person. I feel more like his nurse than his wife. He never asks how I am doing anymore." Derek replied, "See? You get it. Being with you is always so easy. No pressure. You just let me be me." Latoya responded, "That fire is still there, D. Do not ever forget that." The fire. The exact same word he had used in our bedroom a few hours before. It was not a random, thoughtless comment. It was a theme, a direct quote from the script of his secret life. I kept scrolling, my thumb moving with numb, mechanical precision. The evidence kept mounting, each message another nail in the coffin of our relationship. 6 weeks earlier, she sent him a photograph of herself in tight workout clothes, glistening with sweat after a run. The caption read, "Wish you were my workout buddy instead of this boring treadmill." He replied, "You have no idea how much I wish for that too." Then 3 weeks earlier, the final undeniable proof that this had crossed fully from emotional to physical. It was a series of messages that made my blood run cold and my vision narrow. Latoya wrote, "Headed to that big hospital charity gala with Elliot's family. So stuffy, so boring. I would rather be anywhere else." Derek replied, "Are you wearing the blue dress? The one you wore to that wedding in Sonoma?" She answered, "Oh, so you remember that, do you? That was a long time ago." Derek responded, "I remember everything about that night." There was a pause in their conversation for a few hours. I checked the date. It was a Saturday night when I had been out with my sister Rochelle for her birthday dinner at a restaurant in downtown Charlotte. Derek had told me he was having a quiet night in, watching the game. I had texted him a photograph of my dessert. He had responded with a quick heart emoji and, "Looks good, baby. Eat some for me." Minutes later, he had gone back to his conversation with Latoya. Later that night, Derek wrote, "How is it going? Have you survived yet?" Latoya replied, "Barely. I just snuck out to the terrace for some air. And guess who is here? That guy from the gym I told you about. The really fit one. He just asked for my number. He is very single." Derek answered immediately, "What? Are you serious? Do not mess with me." Latoya wrote, "Why are we getting a little possessive?" His reply came fast. "Do not play games. Where are you right now?" She sent, "On the terrace. I needed to escape." He answered, "I am leaving my parents' place now. I was there for dinner. Meet me at the old spot in 20 minutes. The old spot. I knew exactly what that was. He had told me about it once, in one of those vulnerable, nostalgic moods. A small, scenic overlook outside town where he and Latoya used to go to watch the stars when they were younger. My hands shook. While I had been celebrating my sister's birthday, naively believing he was at home, he had been racing to a clandestine meeting with his ex-girlfriend because he was jealous of another man. My hands were shaking, but not from sadness or fear. It was from a pure, crystalline rage that made me feel lightheaded. This was no longer just an inspection. This was a demolition. I started taking screenshots methodically, as if I were documenting a critical component failure. I did not miss anything. Every flirty text, every suggestive photograph, every carefully constructed lie. I captured 63 images in total. 63 separate data points proving a 9-month systematic betrayal. I needed to get the evidence off his phone and onto my own device. I opened his email application. He was one of those people who stayed logged into everything for convenience. I composed a new message, attached all 63 screenshot images, and sent it to my own personal email address. The subject line was simply, "Evidence." As soon as the email was sent, I went into his sent folder and deleted the message, and then into his trash folder and permanently deleted it from there. I cleared the cache of his email application for good measure. I placed the phone back on the charger on his nightstand, positioning it at the exact angle I had found it. He would wake up in the morning and never know anything had changed, until I chose to show him. I went back to the living room and opened my laptop. It was now just after 4 o'clock in the morning. The raw rage had subsided, replaced by that same cold, clear operational focus I used at work when a failure report landed on my desk. He had not just made a mistake. He had not just had one stupid, thoughtless moment. He had actively and consciously engineered a long-term, multifaceted deception while simultaneously planning to marry me, to merge our finances, to stand in front of our families and promise to be faithful for the rest of his life. This was not a flaw that could be repaired or patched. This was fundamental contamination of the entire system, and it needed to be purged. On my clean desktop, I created a new folder. I named it Exit Strategy. The inspection phase was over. Now it was time for remediation. My plan came together with the kind of speed and clarity that only absolute, unshakable certainty can produce. There would be no dramatic, tearful confrontation. There would be no screaming match across the living room. There would be no begging, no empty promises to change, no discussion of couples therapy. That was not my way. My way was precision. My way was documentation. My way was a quiet, thorough, completely irreversible disassembly of the fraudulent life we had built together. Every step had to be calculated. Every action had to be deliberate. First, the finances. This was the primary support structure of our shared future, and it had to be dismantled first. At 4:15 in the morning, I logged into our joint wedding savings account. The screen glowed in the dark, displaying the balance, $65,214.38. It had once filled me with pride and excitement. Now it looked like a monument to a lie. I went through the transaction history, a task my brain was uniquely suited for. I took screenshots of every deposit I had made from my personal checking account and the initial large deposit from my grandmother's inheritance. The total I calculated was $50,150. I initiated a transfer for that exact amount into my private individual checking account. The transfer was instantaneous. The new balance in the joint account was $15,064.38. His contributions. I left every penny of his money untouched. I then downloaded the official bank statements for the past 2 years, used a simple annotation program to highlight each of my contributions in yellow, and saved the document as a portable document format file in the Exit Strategy folder. It was clean. It was documented. It was undeniable. The joint account, the financial symbol of our union, was the first system to be officially and permanently decommissioned. Second, the wedding itself, the physical manifestation of the lie. I took the large white binder from the bookshelf, where we kept all the vendor contracts. It was filled with pastel tabs and cheerful notes in my handwriting. It made me feel faintly sick. I started with the biggest items first, the photographer. I found the contract, called the 24-hour booking line, and canceled our date. I already knew from the contract that we would lose the $2,500 deposit. It was a painful but necessary financial loss. Next, the venue by the lake. I sent a formal email, as required by their contract, canceling our reservation. Another $5,000 gone. The caterer, a $3,000 loss. The florist, the disc jockey, the string quartet for the ceremony. One by one, I dismantled our wedding. Every single contract, I noted with grim satisfaction, was in my name. I had signed them because my credit score was significantly higher than his. Every deposit had been paid from my contributions to the wedding fund. I saved every cancellation confirmation email and every receipt for the lost deposits into the Exit Strategy folder. The total loss in non-refundable deposits came to $15,000. His half, I calculated, was $7,500. Using a template on my computer, I created a neat, professional-looking invoice for that amount, addressed to him, with a payment due date of 30 days. Third, our entangled digital life. I opened my password manager and began the methodical process of extraction. Our shared streaming services account, which was billed to my credit card, got a new password. Our other streaming subscriptions, same procedure. The online grocery account, rideshare applications, even the shared cloud storage where we kept household documents. I moved everything important to a new, private space and logged him out. Then the more serious items. I logged into my credit card accounts where he was listed as an authorized user on 2 of my cards for emergencies. I clicked the option to remove him and reported his cards as lost so new ones would be issued to me with different numbers. His access to my finances was severed with a few quiet, deliberate clicks. By 5 o'clock in the morning, I was standing in the middle of our silent living room, taking inventory. The process was cold and detached. I made a list in my mind of everything I had bought with my own money before he moved in, and everything I had paid for during our relationship. The 65-inch ultra-high-definition television on the wall, the surround sound system, the high-end espresso machine he used every morning like it was his birthright, the plush bedroom furniture set we had picked out together at a store in Charlotte, but that had been charged entirely to my card. I had an organized digital filing system for all major purchases. I went into my cloud storage, pulled the receipts for each item, and saved copies into the exit strategy folder. This was not about being petty or materialistic. This was about separating assets with the same surgical precision I used to identify and isolate faulty wiring in a critical medical device. At 5:30 in the morning, with the first hints of dawn streaking the sky beyond the windows, I began to pack his things. I was not a woman scorned throwing clothes around in a hurricane of rage. I was an inspector decommissioning a failed project and preparing its components for removal. I got our suitcases down from the top of the closet. I went through his dresser drawers. I folded each of his expensive designer t-shirts neatly. I rolled his socks into matching pairs. I went into the bathroom and collected his toiletries, placing them in a separate bag so nothing would leak. In the closet, I gathered his collection of watches from their stand. I wrapped each one carefully in bubble wrap so they would not get scratched. I pulled his dress shirts from the hangers, smoothing the fabric before laying them in the suitcase. As I packed, I found little remnants of our life together. A ticket stub from a concert in Atlanta, a funny postcard I had sent him from a work trip to Chicago. I looked at each item without emotion, then dropped it in the trash. They were artifacts from a failed experiment. I was not destroying his property. I was efficiently removing it from my operational space. At exactly 6 o'clock in the morning, I picked up my phone and called my older sister, Rochelle. She owned a small independent bookstore in the next town over, in Concord, and kept notoriously odd hours. She answered on the second ring, her voice thick and groggy with sleep. "Keisha, it is 6 in the morning," she said. "Is everything all right? Is it Mom and Dad?" "They are fine," I said, my voice steady and clear. "Rochelle, I need you in your truck. No questions. As soon as you can get here." There was a short pause. She knew me. She knew my inspection voice, the one I used at work when something was seriously wrong. It was devoid of emotion, focused only on the task at hand. "I will be there in 45 minutes, she said and hung up. While I waited for her, I executed the final, most critical part of the plan. I sat down at my laptop, opened the exit strategy folder, and compiled the 63 screenshots of his texts with LaToya into a single, seamless portable document format file. I added a simple cover page. Documentation of communications between Derek Lawson and LaToya Price, January, September 2025. I organized the screenshots chronologically and used a simple editing tool to highlight the most damning exchanges in glaring yellow. The final document was 25 pages long. It was an irrefutable, undeniable record of his betrayal. Then I drafted a new email. The subject line was plain and professional. Information regarding the conduct of Derek Lawson. The body of the email was short and direct. I wrote, "To whom it may concern, the attached document details a 9-month emotional and physical affair between my fiancé, Derek Lawson, and a married emergency room nurse named LaToya Price. I believe this information is relevant to your interests. Please see the attached documentation." Finally, I compiled the list of recipients. Derek's parents, Judge Leonard and Angela Lawson. His sister Whitney, who idolized him. His direct supervisor at the financial advising firm, Mr. Coleman. I knew for a fact that Derek had been using his company phone and email for some of his communications with LaToya. And finally, the most important recipient, LaToya's husband, Elliot Price. I found his email address easily. It was linked on his public social media page for his hardware store. 6 months earlier, he had posted heartfelt updates about his recovery from open heart surgery, thanking their community in Charlotte for prayers and support. While that man was literally fighting for his life, learning to trust his own body again, His wife had been sneaking off to secret meetings with my fiancé. I saved the email as a draft. I would not send it yet. The timing, as with any controlled demolition, had to be perfect. Rochelle arrived at exactly 6:45 in her old beat-up pickup truck. I watched from the window as she climbed out, stretching her back. She took one look at my face, and then at the stacks of boxes and suitcases by the door. She did not ask a single question. She did not need to. She came over and wrapped her arms around me in a tight hug. "I am so sorry, Kay," she whispered into my hair. Then she pulled back, her expression hardening with a kind of fierce protectiveness. "All right, let us get this done." We worked in focused, efficient silence, like a team that had been doing this for years. Rochelle, stronger than me, carried the heavier boxes of books and kitchen gadgets. I carried the suitcases of clothes and the smaller items. We loaded every single thing that belonged to Derek into the back of her truck. By 7:30, the apartment was empty of him. His presence had been completely erased. The only things left were my things, my life. The rooms felt instantly lighter, cleaner, like a space that had been professionally decontaminated. Rochelle closed the tailgate of the truck with a loud thud. "So what is the plan for all this?" she asked, gesturing to the mound of his possessions. "You are going to park down the street around the corner, where he cannot see the truck when he leaves," I said. "You are going to wait for my text. It will be a single word. Now, when you get it, you are going to drive all of this to his parents' house in that perfect gated community of theirs, and you are going to leave it all on their pristine front porch." Rochelle gave a low whistle. "You know that will cause an earthquake in that house." "I am counting on it," I said. She nodded, a grim smile on her face. "Consider it done." "And you?" she asked. "I am going to perform the final system diagnostic and present my findings," I replied. She gave me another long hug. "You call me when it is over," she said. "I do not care what time it is." "I will," I promised. I went back into the quiet, emptied apartment. The air smelled different, fresher. I brewed a pot of my favorite dark roast coffee, the rich scent filling the kitchen. I poured myself a mug, black, and sat down at the table. I laid out the documents I had printed in a neat row, like exhibits at a trial. Exhibit A, the bank statement with my contributions highlighted, showing the transfer of my $50,150. Exhibit B, the professional-looking invoice for his $7,500 share of the lost wedding deposits. Exhibit C, a formal, legally compliant 30-day eviction notice downloaded from the state's official website and filled out with his name. And finally, Exhibit D, the 25-page printout of his 9-month affair with LaToya, highlighted in all the right places. I took a slow sip of hot coffee. The system was prepped. All variables were controlled. The environment was sterile. All I had to do now was wait for the subject of the inspection to wake up and walk into my laboratory. At exactly 8:15 in the morning, I heard the familiar creak of the bedroom door opening. A moment later, Derek padded into the kitchen. He was wearing an old faded t-shirt of mine that he liked to sleep in. His hair was a mess, and he was yawning. He looked, for all the world, like the innocent, charming man I was supposed to marry in 8 months. Looking at him felt like watching a stranger wearing a very familiar mask. "Morning, baby," he said, scratching his stomach as he headed for the coffee pot. "Is that the good stuff I smell?" "It is," I said, my voice perfectly even. "There is a cup for you on the counter." He ambled over, grabbed the mug I had set out, and took a long sip. He leaned against the countertop, smiling at me over the rim of the mug. "You are up early," he said. "You could have slept in a little. I know you were tired last night." I did not answer that. "I had some important things to take care of," I replied instead, my eyes never leaving his face. His smile faltered slightly as his gaze finally traveled around the room. His eyes landed on the empty space where his favorite leather armchair had been, then on the bare spot where his bookshelf used to stand, overflowing with his history books. Finally, his gaze fell on the stack of suitcases and boxes lining the entryway by the front door. The smile vanished completely. "What is all that?" he asked, his voice hesitant. "Are we redecorating?" He let out a nervous little laugh. "Keisha, what is going on?" I took another calm sip of my coffee, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make the room feel heavier. "Your things," I said. The two words landed between us like a dropped weight. "What?" His laugh died. He set his mug down with a clatter. "What are you talking about, Kay? Is this some kind of joke?" "Your belongings." I clarified, my tone as flat and matter-of-fact as if I were reading a technical manual. Everything has been packed carefully. Your watches are wrapped so they will not get scratched. Rochelle's truck is parked just down the street, waiting for you. He stared at me, then at the stack of papers laid out on the table, his eyes narrowing as confusion bled into fear. Keisha, you are starting to scare me. What did you do? Right on cue, as if the universe had decided to underscore my work. His phone began to buzz on the counter where he had dropped it. One notification, then another, then a rapid-fire string of alerts. It was 8:45 in the morning. 1 minute earlier, I had sat down at my laptop and clicked send on the email draft. The final, irreversible phase of the plan was now in motion. Derek picked up his phone, frowning. As he read the first notification, the color drained from his face. He tapped the screen, scrolling. His breath hitched. His eyes darted up to mine, wide with dawning horror. Keisha, he whispered, what did you do? I met his gaze, my own voice as calm and steady as a surgeon's hand. I performed a quality control audit on our relationship, I said, enunciating each word. It failed inspection. His phone began to ring. The caller identification flashed on the screen. Dad. He hesitated, then answered. Hey, Dad, I can explain, he started. Even from across the room, I could hear Judge Lawson's voice roaring through the speaker, furious and disbelieving. Derek flinched as if he had been struck, then stabbed at the screen to end the call. The phone immediately lit up with more messages. His mother, his sister, his supervisor. You went through my phone, he finally managed, the words a mix of accusation and panicked disbelief. You gave me the passcode, I reminded him calmly. You held it up and said you had nothing to hide. He began pacing, running a hand through his hair. Those messages, he said quickly, they are not what they look like. I think they are exactly what they look like, I replied, setting my cup down on its saucer with a soft click. They look like you have been carrying on a deep, multi-layered emotional affair and at least one physical meeting with your married ex-girlfriend for the last 9 months, all while you were actively planning our wedding and using our joint savings. That was when he broke. He tried to cry. It was a pathetic, theatrical display. Loud, gasping sobs, his shoulders shaking in a way that felt rehearsed. He stumbled toward me, hands outstretched. Baby, please, he said, dropping to his knees beside my chair. I love you. I swear I love you. LaToya means nothing to me. It was a mistake. Just a stupid, meaningless mistake. A mistake, I repeated. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk from the store on your way home. A mistake is accidentally deleting the wrong file. What you did, Derek, was a systematic, long-term campaign of deception and betrayal, which you then summarized for me in one incredibly cruel sentence last night. His phone rang again. He glanced at the screen, then went pale. It is my boss, he whispered. You should probably answer, I suggested conversationally. I did mention in my email that you appeared to be using company time and resources for your extracurricular activities. I imagine he will want to discuss that potential breach of company policy with you. Derek let the call ring out. He sank back on his heels, staring at me. I watched his expression change. Panic, then pleading, then something darker. You are destroying my life, he hissed finally, anger replacing the fake sorrow. No, I corrected. I am not destroying anything. I am handing your life back to you, exactly as you actually built it. I am simply providing the documentation. His phone buzzed with a text message. He looked down. It is Whitney, he muttered. She says I am disgusting, and she never wants to speak to me again. I watched the last thread of his composure snap. The begging stopped. The tears dried. He got to his feet slowly, and the real Derek, the one under the charming mask, finally showed himself. You controlling psycho, he spat. This is exactly why I needed someone like LaToya. You are boring. You are a walking, talking spreadsheet. Your whole life is a checklist. You think your little job is so important, but you are just a glorified inspector sitting in a gray cubicle looking at charts all day. He was pacing again, his voice rising. LaToya is a hero, he shouted. She saves lives in a hospital emergency room. She is exciting. She has passion. What do? You stare at metal under a microscope. I picked up my coffee again, my hand perfectly steady. I let his tirade wash over me like static. I prevent pacemakers from failing, which in turn saves lives, I said quietly. But you are right about one thing. I am predictable. Predictably thorough. His phone rang once more. He glanced at the screen, then swallowed hard. It is LaToya, he said. He answered. I could not hear his words because they were immediately drowned out by her voice. High-pitched, furious, almost shrieking. Even from across the room, I could make out enough. Elliot showed me that email. How could you be so careless? You ruined everything. Derek hung up, staring at the floor. Her husband kicked her out, he said faintly. She says I ruined her life. Interesting, I said. It seems like you were a defective part in more than one system. There was a knock on the front door, soft but firm. I opened it, and Rochelle stepped inside. She took in the scene in one glance. Derek standing in the middle of the kitchen, pale and shaking. The papers on the table, the suitcases by the door. Truck is ready, she said, her voice calm and businesslike. Derek stared at her, then at me. You planned this, he said slowly, horror creeping back into his voice. I execute complex plans for a living, I told him. This was just another quality audit. And you, your character, your integrity, have been recalled due to a critical manufacturing defect. He tried one last angle, desperation rising again. What about the wedding? He demanded, his voice cracking. The deposits, Keisha. We are going to lose thousands and thousands of dollars. I reached for the invoice on the table and slid it toward him. Your half of the non-refundable deposits comes to $7,500, I said. I have already documented and absorbed my losses. I expect a payment from you within 30 days. I do not have $7,500, he shouted. You know I do not. You have $15,064.38 in what used to be our joint wedding account, I replied. That should be more than enough to cover your share, with plenty left for a security deposit and first month's rent on a new apartment. His face flushed red. You took the money, he yelled. That was our money. You cannot just do that. I took my contributions, I said, my voice turning sharp. Every single deposit I made is documented on those bank statements. You are welcome to hire a lawyer and dispute it. I imagine your father could recommend one, although I suspect he will be very busy dealing with the fallout to his reputation. The mention of his father made him flinch again. Whatever fight was left in him deflated. Rochelle and I began carrying his suitcases and boxes to the front door. He stood there, watching as his life was reduced to neatly packed containers. Where am I supposed to go? He asked quietly, sounding suddenly much younger. That is no longer a variable in my equation, I said, walking past him with a box of his shoes. Maybe LaToya has some couch space available. Her husband kicked her out, he repeated, staring at nothing. Then the two of you can find a new place together, I said. You always said she had that wonderful fire. It should be cozy. He grabbed his wallet and keys with stiff movements, pulling on jeans and a sweatshirt over his sleep clothes in the middle of the living room. He paused by the door and turned back to me. You are going to regret this, Keisha, he said. The threat was hollow, but he tried to give it teeth. I pulled my phone from my pocket and showed him the screen, where a bright red icon indicated that a voice recording application had been running. This entire conversation, from the moment you walked into the kitchen, has been legally recorded, I said. This is a one-party consent state. If you try to slander or defame me in any way, I will not only sue you into bankruptcy, I will also release this audio. Everyone will hear you admit to your affair and then verbally abuse me. Do you really think that is a risk you want to take right now? His mouth opened, then closed. He looked at me and saw nothing but resolve. He walked out without another word, brushed past Rochelle in the hallway, got into his car, and drove away. I watched him go, then took out my phone and sent Rochelle a single text message. Now. A moment later, she replied, On my way to the Lawsons. I closed the door to my apartment. My apartment. I walked through the silent rooms, fingers brushing over the back of the couch, the cool surface of the kitchen counter, the handle of the bedroom door. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe deeply. The air felt clean. The silence felt peaceful, not tense. The contamination had been identified, isolated, and permanently removed. The system was functioning normally again. The 5 days that followed were like watching a controlled demolition from a safe distance. I did not have to lift another finger. I had set the dominoes up carefully. All I had to do was watch them fall. Rochelle called me later that afternoon to report on the delivery. Girl, she said, keeping her voice steady but with a hint of dark amusement. When I pulled up to that gated community, the security guard looked at me and that truck like I had no business breathing their air. I told him I was delivering Derek's things to his parents. He raised his eyebrows so high I thought they might leave his forehead. Did you talk to his parents? I asked. No, she said. I did exactly what you said. I stacked every single box and suitcase neatly on that polished stone porch, right under that giant wreath his mother always hangs. He was sitting on the curb with his head in his hands. He did not look up once. I took a photograph for you, then left. A mutual friend, Marcia, who was close with Whitney, later told me the scene inside the Lawson household had been apocalyptic. Judge Lawson, a man who had built his career on ethics and integrity, apparently looked at Derek and at the mountain of boxes on the porch and said, in a voice as cold as ice, "You are a disgrace to this family and to my name." After that, he refused to speak another word to him. The next day, Derek's mother, Angela, called me. I sat on my couch, phone pressed to my ear, bracing for a storm. Instead, I heard quiet sobbing. "Keisha," she said, her voice trembling, "I am so sorry. I am mortified. We raised him better than this. Your email was shocking, but I cannot say I was completely surprised. I always saw a certain weakness in him, a need for constant approval." I swallowed. "You are not responsible for his choices," I said. "He is a grown man. We were thrilled to have you as a daughter-in-law," she continued. "We thought you were exactly what he needed. Instead, we have this mess." "I appreciate you saying that," I replied. There was nothing else to say. If Derek's situation was bad, LaToya's was worse. Her husband, Elliot, did not just quietly file for divorce. He went public. He wrote a post on the local community social media page for our area, which had more than 20,000 members. He did not rant. His tone was calm, dignified, and devastating. He posted a single screenshot, the text where Derek told LaToya to meet him at the old spot. Underneath it, he wrote, "To my friends and neighbors, while I was at home recovering from major heart surgery this past summer, my wife, LaToya Price, a nurse at Northside Community Hospital whom many of you know and trust, was having an affair with her ex-boyfriend, financial advisor Derek Lawson. I am filing for divorce. I ask for privacy for my family, but I felt our community had a right to know about this breach of trust." The post spread across our city in hours. Hundreds of comments poured in, most of them offering support for Elliot and condemning LaToya and Derek. The hospital where LaToya worked saw the post and placed her on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. Derek's firm launched their own investigation. His supervisor, Mr. Coleman, called me directly to ask for a statement. I gave it calmly, sticking to dates, times, and facts. I could practically feel the public relations panic through the phone. Having the judge's son on their staff had been a prestige point. Having the judge's son exposed as someone who used company resources to help conduct an affair with a married nurse whose husband was a local business owner was a liability they could not overlook. Derek was suspended without pay. The most ironic part, the part that felt like poetic justice, was what happened when Derek tried to lean on LaToya after everything blew up. He really believed, I think, that they were some kind of tragic, passionate pair. Two souls against the world. A friend of mine who lived in the same complex where LaToya had rented a small apartment told me she saw Derek's car pull into the parking lot one evening. She happened to be walking her dog. She watched LaToya peek through her blinds, see the car, and then yank the blinds closed. She never opened the door. The man she had risked her marriage and her career for was now radioactive. She was smart enough to cut him off completely. Meanwhile, my life settled back into a rhythm. I went to work that Monday feeling more focused than I had in a long time. The quiet hum of anxiety that had been following me everywhere, through lab meetings, into bed, into the shower, was gone. I sat in my office at the company, staring at a set of diagnostic charts for a new infusion pump. My coworker, Janelle, knocked lightly and stuck her head in. "You look intense," she said. "Everything all right?" I considered lying, then decided against it. "Derek and I are no longer together," I said. "He was unfaithful. It is over." Janelle's eyes widened. "Keisha, I am so sorry," she said. "Do you want to talk about it?" "Not right now," I said. "Maybe later. Right now I want to catch this fault in the pump before it goes into production." She studied my face for a moment, then nodded. "You let me know when you are ready," she said. "And if you want me to help key someone's car, I am available." I actually laughed. "I think the universe is already handling it," I said. I spent that week canceling the last of the wedding arrangements and returning small items. Most vendors were surprisingly kind once I explained that the engagement had ended because of infidelity. The woman who managed the lake venue was so horrified by the story that she actually refunded half of my deposit out of sympathy. "You take this money and do something special for yourself," she told me over the phone. Maybe a trip somewhere nice where no one is lying to you. I will, I said, meaning it. I kept my weekly therapy appointment with Dr. Carla Freeman, a Black psychologist I had been seeing for years. Therapy, for me, was like regular maintenance on a machine. You service it before it breaks. When I finished telling Dr. Freeman everything, from the terrible sentence in the dark bedroom to the email and the boxes on the porch, she sat back in her chair and regarded me thoughtfully. Your ability to detach and take action in a crisis is remarkable, she said. Some people would call that cold, I said. Some people would, she replied. I call it a coping strategy that kept you from minimizing what you discovered. You did not shout. You did not hit him. You did not destroy his property. You protected yourself with documentation, boundaries, and consequences. That is not cold. That is very clear. I do not feel guilty, I admitted. Not even a little. Good, she said. You did nothing wrong. Rochelle and her wife, Felicia, had me over for dinner twice that week in their cozy bungalow in Concord. The first night, Rochelle grilled salmon in the backyard while Felicia chopped vegetables in the kitchen for a salad. The air was warm, the neighborhood quiet. I kept thinking about what I would have done if it were me, Rochelle said as we ate. I think I might have thrown his clothes off the balcony. You would have put on a whole show, Felicia said, smiling. Keisha built a case file. I built an exit strategy folder, I corrected, taking a sip of wine. On the second night, after dessert, Felicia raised her glass. To Keisha, she said, for handling betrayal with spreadsheets and surgical precision. Rochelle clinked her glass against mine. And for not actually killing anyone, she added. Because I absolutely would have. I laughed, and for once the laugh felt real and light. The three of us sat there at the dining table. The sound of a television game showed drifting in faintly from a neighbor's house, and I realized that my life, stripped of one lying, defective piece of machinery, still worked. The system still ran. In some ways, it was already running better. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.